You want to follow where the VC dollars are going, straight to the future. And for that, you need the intersection of e-commerce and AI. That's exactly what my next guest does. Akhil, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for inviting me, Shalin. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah. So let's start off. So as you know, our audience is primarily aspiring founders or people on their seven-figure journey, moving on to their eight-figure journey. Tell us very briefly what your company does and what XENA Intelligence is about.
Sure, of course. So, in short, we work with brands that sell on e commerce platforms, primarily Amazon, Walmart, Target in North America, and other platforms across the world like Noon in the Middle East and Flipkart in India, and so on. So, what our software does is it basically makes it easy for
Hmm.
them to manage their products across these platforms by optimizing a lot of the tasks which were traditionally manual in nature. And because of all the capabilities that we have built over the years, we have made it so that the results that are seen by our customers are typically better than it is if they were managed manually or if they were managed in house. So software basically replaces the need for someone to spend a massive amount of time constantly
Hmm.
updating and optimizing their e-commerce presence.
Okay, wonderful. So the promise that your company has to its clients is in terms of cost savings. Does it help on the revenue side?
Tremendously. I mean, revenue is the primary factor which determines the success or failure of a brand and the success or failure of any tool or organization that helps e-commerce brands. So one way that the revenue boost takes place is because of the optimization that take place specifically in ads or ad campaigns.
Hmm.
Our software is able to make changes every hour of the day as opposed to once a week, once a month, however is humanly possible, which results in better performance, better ad dollars spent, and better organic ranking.
That's amazing to hear.
Mhm.
If I were, if I, who are these clients? So when you talk about, so let's break it down into two ways, right? So there's these big brands, and then who are those people at those brands that are coming to you?
Sure. So I'll just give you a brief background of the whole market. Just
Yeah.
let's say US right now. There are approximately 5 million sellers in US marketplaces that are selling across these platforms. Out of these 5 million, 3 million of them, about a little more than half of them, do more than $1 million a year in sales. A small fraction of them include large CPG companies like Nestle and P&G and Mondelez and so on. But apart from that, there's a massive tranche of companies that do reasonably well. They have significant offline sales. They're typically funded very well, either through VCs or through family businesses or self funded. And so there are a lot of these companies that obviously have great products. They usually have patents on their products. They have some distinguished advantage that they experience. But one challenge they face in e-commerce is that e-commerce is not the same as putting products on a shelf and expecting it to sell in store. E-commerce requires a lot of work in terms of continuous
Hmm.
optimizations, continuous analysis, keeping a tab on your competitors, keeping a tab on the specific platform. So that's a lot of work. And so we help with primarily with these brands who have great products, typically do between 1 to $50 million a year in revenue, though there are exceptions. So we work with large companies like Nestle and so on, but our typical ICPs or ideal customer profiles are brands that, like I said, do very well, great products, great demand, usually a patent, and have enough resources to expand quickly if needed.
Because this podcast is so much more than about the company, and we want to focus on the founder, which is you in this case.
Mhm.
Tell me about that moment when you landed that, you don't have to tell the name, but that big client. And you landed that client and you were like, yes, I got it.
Well, to be fair, in the beginning, as an entrepreneur, when the company just started, everything is new. You just purchased your Google Workspace
Hmm.
subscription, which gives you an email ID. You just build your website. Even the smallest first customer, even if they're a trial or even if they're free, it means a lot at that moment because
True.
it means that people are willing to spend their time with you. They trust you implicitly, even though you have zero credibility at that point. They believe that they can add value to their organization. And so that moment was the initial few customers who came in. Granted, we had to do a lot of free trials, we had to spend a lot of time with them. But when they signed, when they started giving money, was a very significant moment for us. The initial few customers, since I did not have any contacts or any inroads into large or small customers. I had to pound the payment, get it myself. So that was quite a journey. But when we moved on to our large client, let's take like the number one e-commerce CPG brand in the US in terms of revenue, it was a whole different ball game, because we were no
Hmm.
longer dealing with founders, we were no longer dealing with entrepreneurs, we were dealing with people who had very specific tasks in mind, who were very good in doing one thing or a set of things that made them a good leader. And so that situation was very different, because you would never imagine a large company working with a 1 year old or 2 year old or 3 year old startup, because there's a lot of risk aversion and a lot of protocols in place. But since they saw value in us, we did a few pilots which they really liked. The moment that they gave us a whole PO, a purchase order, is when, like you said, I went, yes, this puts us in a different league, not
Yeah.
just in terms of revenue, but in terms of just the morale of the team, where we are working with the largest CPG company in the world. That is a special feeling.
Guess that also offers some sort of credibility in the long term for the company
Absolutely.
and also for the team.
Correct. And if I'm sure people know this, but getting a contract through with a large organization is a time consuming process, with
Very.
POs, with compliance, with legal, with signing. It's a whole, with ERP implementation. So it's a whole process. And so I'm glad that we're fortunate to have that experience and get into them. And it was a big moment.
Yeah. So before you purchased the Google Workspace for Xena, were there any other Google Workspaces that you had purchased for other companies and you were just trying to get to the point where you are right now?
Before Xena, I did work as a part time consultant, doing practically what Xena is doing, but manually. And that's where I
Hmm.
got a lot of the ideas that I came. So I had a few small businesses who I was working for as a e-commerce consultant. And at
Hmm.
that point, I did go through the preliminary process of setting up all the backend stuff as well.
Yeah. So did having that knowledge base working for another company and doing that work manually allowed you to get in a lot of detail about the processes.
Right.
That allowed you to come and set up Xena and then move along further with that.
That's correct. The technology really helped me scale, really helped me focus on fundraising, focus on team building. Because if I were to do all those tasks manually, I might not have the time to
Hmm.
build a company.
Akhil, to me, it seems like you're saying that you did not pivot from the original idea.
It would be fair to say that is one way to look at it from a
Yeah.
very broad level. But when you go look at it in minutia or in a day-to-day basis, you could say that we every startup is pivoting in some way every single day.
Yeah.
Pivot in the form of how they work, how they have processes internally, how their product looks like. Even changing a website is practically a pivot, because we are still trying to figure out, just like any company,
Hmm.
uh, what messaging, what positioning, what value we can provide to our customers that will excite them even more, that will encourage them to find more value in what we're providing. So in a way, we are pivoting every day, but big picture, yes, we have practically been the same.
And in those minute pivots, as you put them, in those minute iterations, as you went through those, what were some of the learnings that you took? Any
So
failures?
Oh, practically every day there have
Let's
been
talk
some
about
kind of
those.
failure. It's one of those things, because one thing that I've observed, and not just me, a lot of my peers who are also entrepreneurs, is that in the beginning, when you're building something, you have this first tranche of customers, probably one or two customers who like you, like your product, willing to give you a chance. As that expands, you come across more potential customers, and as you expand, you get more, let's call it, requirements from them. You start hearing things like, I wish this product had this feature, or I wish this product looked more like this other tool that I'm using. So you constantly start hearing these feedback. And so then, as a founder, you are faced with two possibilities: either tell them, listen, we will hustle, we will work our way through, we will implement that tool as soon as possible, and we'll make it better than before, is what you could tell them to try to get the sale. Or you could realize that it is not worth your time, your limited resources, they are not your ICPs, and then move on to the next lead that you have. And this is a very difficult choice at any stage, especially in the early stages, where in your mind you're like, okay, maybe it's a stretch for me and my team, maybe I'll have to divert my attention for a little bit, but the upside of it would or could be massive in terms of acquiring that particular customer, and customers like that. But then there are pros and cons for each of them. You can face failure in each of these directions, because I've seen startups spend a lot of time into implementing certain features, in some cases changing their whole business model just to suit one quote unquote large valuable
Hmm.
customer, because of which they either lose their existing customers interest and value and attention, or they pivot to a market segment which is not as large as they thought it was. So that has happened in varying magnitudes constantly with us as well.
So the market pressure was to make you go broader, but instead you chose to double down on your niche, double down on your strengths, and then go deep into that category.
Correct. That would be a fair assessment, and it would also be fair to say, I mean, it's easy to think of it right now, but initially a lot of the founders, the school of thought is that go where the money is, go
Hmm.
where people are willing to pay. If people are willing to pay, that is a usually a good indicator of something that you should be working on. But then that kind of goes against your thesis that, you might have to divert your resources and stuff like that to kind of suit their needs. So it is a very difficult call, and one of the biggest challenges as an entrepreneur is taking that decision, because you can't go half hearted. You can't be like, okay, maybe I'll try this for some time and then
Hmm.
try it. Cannot, you can only do go in one
You just have
direction.
to come. You
Correct.
just have to commit to it. Full.
Correct.
Full.
And that is one of the hardest decisions, and that is one situation where mentors and advisors could come in huge use. But again, is you get all kinds of advice, all kinds of input. You have to pick and choose your mentors, because that inevitably results in you taking certain decisions in difficult situations.
What is that? Some top of the mind advice or
Mhm.
guidance that you got from some of your mentors?
Sure. So I have a few mentors who have been with me for years, since the beginning, and usually the best kind of mentors are the ones who, one, are willing to provide immediate value to you,
Hmm.
either in the form of a customer, potential customer, investment checks, introductions to other people who could make a massive difference to your business, and those who are willing to spend their personal capital in
Hmm.
making these connections and putting their reputations on the line to enable that. Those are one kind of mentors, and probably the best ones. The second ones are who like to be involved in a startup, like to ride the wave, tell people that, hey, I was in this I have 0.25 percentage of this startup. I knew it would succeed. And so they have just got some shares and they're just riding the wave. Usually these people are loud. They may or may not have been successful in their entrepreneurial ventures earlier. And those kind of advisors are the least helpful for
Hmm.
startups. And everyone gives advice. I would rather take advice from people who have skin in the game and who
Hmm.
genuinely are your well wishers.
Yeah, someone who's succeeded, someone who's really wishing for your success,
Correct.
and they not only wish, they've invested in your success. So you earlier you said something very interesting. Some founders choose to go where the money is. Now that can be interpreted two ways. Go where the market money is, or go where the VC money is, and they don't necessarily overlap, do they?
Rarely do they
Okay.
overlap. That
And
is a
then
very, very, very good question. I think, please, you were saying.
yeah, and so you are funded by VC company. Tell us what the journey was like. How you approached them, what the pitch was, what was that whole process like?
So you are absolutely right, and not a lot of people talk about it. Is the fact that VC money or pursuing VC money in a lot of situations is different from getting customer money
Mm,
or market money, for a lot of reasons. One, because VCs have certain, they're humans, they have their thoughts and they have their biases. And because of that, when you talk to VCs, there are few contradictory statements you hear when you are trying to fundraise. Some VCs would say that your market is too big, there's a lot of competitors, no point in going. While at the same time, for the same company, for the same pitch, I've heard other VCs say, hey, your market's too small,
mm,
there's not enough money, there's no point spending time on it. So, and sometimes when you
mm,
hear it, and especially someone like me who has been through like hundreds of VC meetings in different stages, it is funny because of this level of contradiction. And of course, once a VC expresses their interest to not invest, it is futile usually to argue with them and to go back and forth and to litigate their points, and I just agree to disagree and move on to the next person who's interested. And this puts the founders, including me, in a situation where we have two options again:
Hmm.
to take their input seriously, to take their advice and observation seriously, or to ignore them and move on. And that is again a very difficult thing to do, because often, let's say you talk to 5 VCs, and 4 out of the 5 VCs tell you that your product's never going to grow because of this one reason.
Hmm.
And after 5 meetings, you might hear that, oh, if 4 people have said it, that means it means something, and then you go to change it. But if you had spoken to 50 VCs and only 10 of them have said this, then you might reconsider your decision of whether to take that input seriously or not. And that was a situation where I was in, and a lot of founders are in, because a VC says no for a lot of reasons. One of the most common reason is because they don't have the money to invest. They don't have the dry powder, and obviously they can't say it in public, or they can't say it out
Hmm.
loud. They can't
Hmm.
say we have no money. Sorry. They usually say that, hey, your startup is great, but it doesn't align with our thesis. Your startup's great, but we feel that the market is dilute, or any number of reasons. It's so easy to find a reason not to invest or criticize a startup. It's not, people can do it in their sleep. And so in that situation, as a founder, pretty early on, I took these rejections pretty seriously. It hurt me. I took it as a comment against me or my abilities or my aptitude, and that hurt me pretty well. And I hope that whoever's listening, other potential founders, when they listen to advice from VCs, mentors, well wishers, it would behoove them to take it with a pinch of salt and do not lose their self confidence in the process of fundraising, which, like you said, is a brutal,
Hmm.
long, drawn out process, which never really makes it easy. It just makes you have a thicker skin, which makes it easier for you to process or digest rejections, which would inevitably come your way.
So what I'm hearing is one is increase your sample size of the people that you talk to and get the feedback that you receive.
Mhm.
Second is always take the feedback with a grain of salt because there may be multiple reasons why someone might say no to an idea,
Mhm.
and that reason may not be the actual reason why they're saying no.
Correct.
But then how do you as a founder strike that balance between being persistent with your mission and being someone like Don Quixote on a mission that everybody's saying no and you're still persistent. So how do you find that balance?
I think the everybody's saying no thought is something that is, like I said, in your thoughts. I mean, it's a mental thing. It's a matter of perspective. So
Mm,
again, if you talk to 20 VCs, or rather, let's say, yeah, if you talk to 20 VCs and 19 of them say no, in the 19th occasion, you would be like, I'm a loser, my startup's useless, nobody believes in me, what is the point? But let's say the 20th person you talk to suddenly likes what you're saying, they ask all the right question, and they invest. And so that
mm,
kind of flips over all the rejection of the 19 that you received before that. So like I said, it's a matter of perspective. It's just a matter of time before your perception, before your morale changes. So knowing that, now I know that even if I talk to 100 VCs right now, 99 of them no, I still know that since I've done this before and since I've
mm,
seen others do it before, it does not mean the end of the world. It does not mean that your startup won't work. It does not mean that you're not a good founder or a good person. And so that perspective really does help. And I think it's one of those sayings that as you grow older, you get wiser. This is part of being wiser, I believe.
mm.
Yeah.
Do the and I haven't raised any funds, so I don't know. Maybe you can shed some light on this. Do the VCs ask for some level of bootstrapping, some level of success with your own money being inside the company before they're willing to invest a portion?
Typically, that is one consideration that VCs have, especially early stage VCs, just because of the fact that the risks that they're taking early on is much higher than they would if they come in later on in a business. So to one of the ways that they justify the risk is to know whether or not the founder had put in their own personal capital into the business, which signals to them that, okay, if this person trusts themselves so much,
Mm,
it kind of offsets some of the risk going forward. But in my situation, when I started, I did not have any money to put in my business. And so that is, I think, one of the reasons why it took me a little while to grow, raise funds, because I had nothing at that point and I was just a student. But if I had put in my personal capital, I think I might have been able to raise funds much faster.
Okay, that might have sped up the process. Now, let's talk about what those funds are doing and how they're helping the companies. So, the brands, the existing clients that you have, can you walk us through a real world case study of what the client has been, what they were doing previously, and what they've done after the use of XENA Intelligence?
Sure. So I can take an example of one of our earliest customers. They raised some funds. They had great. They were able to procure amazing products from overseas. They had early contracts with big box stores, and they were looking to expand their online presence so that their branding can increase. They can get more exposure, and who wouldn't want to grow online. So this person, they started setting up their own account. They figured how hard can it be. They started setting their own account, put up the products online, and obviously in a few months they realized that it's one, lot of work, two, requires a steep learning curve, and
Mm,
three, the results are not as forthcoming as they thought it would. So they moved on to hiring a freelancer from Upwork or Fiverr to help them in their business, which went great initially. But then they found that the freelancers, they obviously have 10, 20 other companies, and they're usually a group of one or two people. It's very hard for them to. They're very good at mechanical tasks, but very difficult for them to do strategic decision making on behalf of the customers. So to overcome that, this person hired a first in-house person, to an employee, to help them
mm,
manage the growth. Initially went great. There was someone to responsible for the KPIs. Then they realized that as the company started growing, they didn't have enough resources to focus on each product launch, each campaign optimizations, and so on. So this person started using different tools out there, self-serve tools. But again, there were a lot of limitations with the tools, with data accuracy, pricing, and it didn't really help them save time. So then they found out XENA, and basically we helped them offload the whole tasks required in optimization, new product launches, ad campaigns optimization. And so instead they could more focus on strategic growth as opposed
mm.
to day to day and micro strategic growth, in that sense. So in a way, we could clear the plates in terms of managing their e-commerce business. And since we collected this massive amount of data, we also started providing them insights into product changes, into positioning, into branding, and so on, which proved to be really valuable for them.
What is something that some of the smaller e-commerce brands don't understand about the value that AI can bring? And
So
how do you approach them? How do you sell to them?
sure. So a lot of the smaller brands, they obviously have built their brand most likely by themselves. Either they must have worked in another company and then started their own business, or they were consultants themselves and decided to invest in their business. So they are well aware of the things that they need to do to succeed. And when the AI wave started growing in the e-commerce space, they would have most likely tried out a lot of the tools to help them do certain tasks, like changing the product images, for example, or price testing or image testing, and so on. So in the beginning, when these tools came, they were not as effective. They used to crash. There
Mm,
were API issues because it was pretty early on, and these AI agents were not as precise as they have become in more
mm.
recent times. And because of that, they have left a lot of bad taste in their mouth, where they're like, I don't want AI near my products. I would rather do it myself and not depend on them. But as you know, the AI capabilities, AI models are growing every single day. They're becoming more precise, they're becoming more powerful, they're becoming more predictable in terms of their output. And because of that, as we have grown, we have shown a lot of these brands the immediate results that our optimizations are able to do, and hence they are able to come on board in terms of trusting our process and our AI's process in doing that. So it's a little bit of education process to overcome a lot of the inbuilt hesitancy that they may have.
So as these brands grew and as they started scaling up, you helped them scale up even faster and streamline their processes.
Correct.
Now, your company, and tell me what I'm missing here. So your company was launched before OpenAI became, sort of mainstream, before ChatGPT. Everybody and their grandmother was using ChatGPT. How has the proliferation of AI tools helped you in scaling up your business?
Sure. I think we had the discussion a while ago as well when you introduced me to make.com, N8N, all these tools out there that can do different tasks pretty wonderfully. And that kind of made me think of what else could be done with these capabilities. So
Mm,
OpenAI is great in terms of natural language processing. It's great to simplify a lot of intense programmatic tasks that are required. It's great to give very high level insights, alerts in terms of different tasks that are happening in our platform. What it's not great at in a lot of situations is being able to handle hallucinations,
mm,
which is a big problem for all AIs, because at the end of the day, AIs are just very intense programmatic pattern recognition softwares which take certain inputs, process it, and gives an output. And so my focus is to make sure that whatever we use AI in, we minimize the probability of hallucinations and errors, because in our situation, if our software makes an error, it results in real loss in dollar amounts for our customers in terms of lost sales and lost opportunity cost as well. And so one thing that the proliferation of all this deep search model that have come in is it has encouraged me and my team to run a lot more experiments, a lot more tests in terms of the data that we process, in terms of the functionalities that is possible, and also in terms of reducing the time or the cost it needs for us to do certain things. For example, earlier we used to send weekly reports to our customers which were largely pulled manually, or there was an element of human interaction to it. Because of these models that are available, we are now able to do it much more faster, much more automated. And
mm.
even though there is human intervention involved right now to make sure of the accuracy, I wouldn't be surprised if within a few months the whole process can be completely automated, if not made better than what would have been possible manually. So just one example of how things have changed thanks to all the advancements.
Yeah, so your company is able to leverage some of the newer technologies and just by keeping a human in the loop, but really able to touch down on all those automations that allow you to kind of scale up. What does scaling up mean for you? Is it in terms of revenue? Is it in terms of more higher value clients? Is it in terms of more bigger brands that you work with? What is your focus?
Revenue for sure, because we the more revenue we have, the more flexibility we have in terms of expanding our team and expanding our offering. But I think the core focus is scaling up the value that we provide to our customers. That I think is a huge differentiator for us. There's some saying that don't run behind money, run behind excellence. Money will come on its own. I think it's a very famous Bollywood movie that had this saying, and that kind of applies to our situation as well, where your focus or anyone's focus should be on building excellence in value, which in this day and age is super important, and in this day and age is something that keeps evolving continuously. So scaling up means us being able to provide much more impact, much more insights, much more value, and save more time for everyone in our organization and in our customers organization to do what they really like to do, which in most situations is think, be creative, and come up with new ideas.
How do you measure that you're providing more value to your existing clients? Is it in terms of their increase of revenue and cost savings?
Quantitatively, yes, their revenue growth, how much they're performed,
Mm,
metrics that are involved, like conversion rate, click through rate. There are about 50 or 60 different KPIs that they have. Qualitatively, I think I kind of keep a close eye in on our customers. I talk to them, especially the high value ones, at least once every few weeks, make sure everything is running well. And I think that human aspect, despite all the AI
mm,
coming into the picture, that human aspect is still important, I feel. So these are
absolutely.
the two ways that I kind of keep a track of that.
Nice. I love that.
Mhm.
I see musical instruments behind you. Do you play both of those?
I learned ever since I've started learning workflow automations. I thought if I can learn that, maybe I can,
Yeah.
train my muscle memory to learn some of these instruments as well. I heard it's good for keeping your brain active and
Yeah.
releasing endorphins and so on. So sometimes I do.
What is it about playing instruments or finding hobbies or staying active outside of work that allows you to stay focused and sharp?
Sure. So I've always believed that I've had a very average brain capacity, and that a little above average perhaps, in terms of academics, in terms of ranking, when you were in school and so on. So I'm very aware that I'm not the most intelligent, the most smartest, the most clever person on this planet, nor the most hardworking, and I'm pretty aware of that. So knowing those limitations are pretty, I think, important for you. Being self-aware is very important. So one point of self-awareness is that I know that between 12 noon to 2 p.m. is when my brain is the most active. Like I can think, I can be like 200% productive at that time, without coffee, without anything. Earlier, like when I was growing up, it was like you have to sleep early at night, wake up early in the morning. That is how you perform at your best. But then soon I've realized, because of self-awareness, that that is actually not the case. Every person is different, everyone has their own quirks, everyone has their own boundaries, that once they realize it, that is when you can maximize it. So that's one realization that I've made, is like, if I need some creative work done, I will wait till 12 at night, because I know that's when my brain ticks the most. Second, few other realizations is that working out, being physically active, definitely helps, because I think it releases some kind of endorphins or chemicals or
Hmm.
whatever it is. It in a way turns off, shuts off the part of the brain that is analytical, and so it relaxes your brain muscles to kind of relax for some period of time before you come back, and then it turns back on again. And so there are these different quirks, musical instruments being one, because when I'm playing them, it feels like I'm working towards something but not really being exhausted by it. So I think musical instruments are the only thing that kind of do that. The other thing I do is building like massive Lego sets with like 5-10,000 pieces. For a lot of people, including my wife, it is very intimidating, or it's very boring or repetitive, and takes a lot of effort. But for me, it's very calming, it's therapeutic, because I know I'm building towards something, I'm following instructions, I'm using my own thoughts in that process. And so if my wife were to do what I'm doing, I'm sure she should do a whole different set of tasks to kind of be your 100%, or be the best that you can be in any situation.
So if humility had a face, it would look something like you.
Yeah, that's it's just true. Yeah, I think it's important. I think self-awareness comes with a
That's
huge
true.
dose of humility as well.
Self-awareness is very important, and I think the learnings keep on changing as one ages.
Hmm. Yeah.
I love the part that you said about being able to kind of shut off and step away from your day-to-day work and really be in that Zen-like space, that really meditative space where you're either building Lego or you're just learning a new instrument and utilizing different parts of your brain. How important is sleep for you?
Sleep, oof, that is a loaded question. So typically for me, 4 to 5 hours of sleep should be enough. If I sleep any more, I feel exhausted. If I sleep any less, I feel exhausted. Something that I'm probably, it might change as I grow old, but this is something that I've noticed about myself, and it's different for different people. My wife, she needs to sleep early, get up a little early as well, and every person is different. So I think doing some A/B testing on different sleep times, sleep amounts, sleep patterns, I think can go a long way in, again, maximizing your productivity.
Right. So someone who has a very busy day, then steps out, takes that meditative space in terms of music, in terms of playing a sport, in terms of building Lego sets in your case. So think about the 9 to 5 for that person, and then think about the 5 to 9 for that person. How does that person who already has something going on, a primary focus, kind of think about how do I begin my business? How do I scale up as I begin?
In my situation, as well as with a lot of my peers who are founders, I asked them, how did you start this? Rather, why did you start this?
Hmm.
And these are people across different parts of their lives. Some of them are young, some of them have kids, some of them are older. The most common thread I have heard people say on why they started something on their own is because they felt a calling.
Hmm.
They felt a very, very strong inclination towards taking a huge jump, because in a way, changing your professional journey is a huge milestone. There is tremendous risks involved. If you have co-founders, then your life gets intertwined with others lives as well.
Mm.
You have financial uncertainty, you have families that you need to make sure everything is running smoothly. So you have all these risks, but the calling that they feel when pursuing a new business, joining someone, is so great that it eclipses the safety or the feeling of security for a lot of people to kind of not do those steps. And this includes not just in entrepreneurship but other facets of life as well. Let's say I know one of my friends, he is working for a large pharma company. He is really passionate about pursuing a medical degree, becoming a doctor, but
Mm.
he's around my age and it would be borderline unprofessional for him to leave everything, rather irresponsible for him to leave everything and do his 10-15 year medical degree starting now, even though he's so passionate about it. And so that's the same thing I told him as well, like, hey, and he loves his job, getting paid great, his managers love him, he's really good at what he does. But the moment he feels that he has a greater calling towards doing this other passion, whatever it may be, is it comes to him, then he should take the plunge and not worry about it. But if that does not happen, then they should give it some more time.
So when the calling is so loud that the passion allows you to take a leap of faith,
Or if you're pushed towards it, that has, in my case, there was a
and
little bit
that's
of pushing as well.
how so.
I was very unhappy with the people that I was reporting to in my earlier job in India. I felt that my creativity was not used. I felt that it was not a good work environment, and I was fortunate to be super young, have the ability to try and pursue course in the US, which was again a huge risk at that point, but I did get that opportunity and I took it. But unless you're pushed, you should wait for the calling to come by.
And so you took that opportunity and then you've built a family since then. Do you find any difference in the motivation, in the passion, in the energy levels that you've had before child, after child, pre-marriage, post-marriage? How does family play an influence in all of this?
A massive influence, really. So when you're single, when you're a bachelor, you typically have a lot more freedom. You have the ability to make a lot of decisions without taking into account others, and as you have people depending on you, people looking up to you, your decision making inevitably changes in a lot of ways. You tend to be more risk averse. You tend to consider more variables in your decisions, including financial security, personal security, social standing, time commitments. So all these variables change in your life model, and so inevitably it changes how you think and take decisions as well. That's just a
And,
part of life, nothing much you can do about it.
and I'm assuming some A/B testing going on over there as well.
A lot of A/B testing, a lot of changing of tools, changing of prompts, seeing what comes, and then moving from that. Yeah.
Akhil, this has been a wonderful conversation. However, before I let you go, we have to hear about what's next for XENA Intelligence.
Oof, there's every time there's something new
Take
coming.
as much time as you need.
In the short term, since we signed the large CPG company as one of our customers, we figured that we may have stumbled across something that people seem to consider to be super valuable. And so since we raised VC money, we have the freedom to explore that avenue as well, invest a little bit more into building out specifically consumer insights part of our business, which these large companies seem to really like, and we are building on that. Second, recently one of my first employees who was based in India, he has moved now to the Middle East to pursue more customers over there, and we have a very healthy pipeline of customers coming from there. So that is a good sign that whatever we are offering is universally wanted, and that there are a lot of blue ocean out there is untapped opportunities out
Mhm.
there that we need to pursue. So we'll probably be looking to expand into the Middle East as well as other regions as well. We have also launched a few tools that some of our customers used, and so one of the investments that I'm making, and this is a passion project of mine, is whether with very little coding knowledge, if I can create tools that can help me and or help my team or my customers as well. So
Mhm.
one tool that I'm working on specifically for business development is if I can figure out a way where um, I am able to identify potential customers, tailor a message just for them, do research on them, send them proposals, send them landing pages which are customized to their needs, and that in a way to show value of what XENA can do for them at scale. So that is something that I'm working on in terms of internal growth for potentially acquiring new customers as well. And at the same time, we are building a few tools to enhance our own capabilities as well.
Yeah. So for anyone who's listening and who has experience with workflow automation and sales outreach, please go to the YouTube description,
Mhm,
find Akhil,
mhm.
and shoot him a message showing what your capabilities are.
I would love to. It's so good to see how easy it has become for someone to really get a grasp of what they do in terms of building new tools. I know, Shalin, you have built something as well. Again, I don't think you have massive coding knowledge, uh,
None.
but you have been able to do that, and I think that's a good sign for all of us that
Yeah.
a little bit of effort, a little bit of passion, a little bit of time. There's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah. It's a fun journey.
Mhm.
But thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. We'll maybe the next time that we talk for this podcast, we'll hear more about the Middle East expansion.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.